This is Fireside Leadership, where we explore leadership lessons that lead to personal and professional success. Here are your hosts, Janice Lee, Lisa McGale, and Leanne Nugent.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fireside Leadership. My name is Leanne Nugent, and I'm here joined with my co-hosts, Lisa McGale, Janice Lee, and we are joined with a special guest today, Anne-Marie Lerch. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So Anne-Marie is the founder of Hi-Tech Hui, and during the pandemic, started another IT and cybersecurity company called Cyberuptive. Her organization this year has won a few awards this year, the fastest 50 growing companies in Hawaii, and Inc. 5000, which is the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States. So congratulations, Anne-Marie. Congratulations to your whole organization. And ultimately, we're here to just talk to you about your success. How did you achieve this kind of success? And we just want to hear from you today. So thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think I should start with how I got here. And let me share a little bit about that journey. So I live in Hawaii currently, and I used to live in Las Vegas, and I felt that I had my dream job. I was living in Las Vegas, working for a company called Zappos. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of that. And I just loved everything about it. And at the same time, I'm going to call him Chuck. So my husband, Chuck, wanted to go back and move to Hawaii and kind of like live his dream life. And, he just assumed that, I was going to follow him. But what happened was it just didn't work out that way. I stayed in Vegas, and can you believe it? Like, I turned down living in paradise because I loved my job so much. And so he went to Hawaii. So from Vegas, he went to Hawaii to do some consulting work. And then he was going back and forth between Hawaii and Vegas. And so what happened was I ended up getting pregnant with my second child. And at that point, we didn't think it made sense for our family to be apart. And so at that point, that's when I made the decision that okay, why don't I move to Hawaii and let's have our family all together. And so when I moved to Hawaii, there was no tech companies for me to join. So my background is in tech, mainly software development and data analytics. And I've worked for amazing companies. I've worked for like Accenture and Microsoft and then Zappos. And coming to Hawaii, there were no huge tech companies. There wasn't anything that really excited me. And so one of my dreams in life was to start my own company. It's always been a dream. I've had little companies or side gigs here and there for years, but nothing crazy. Just like they were just side hustles. And so when I moved to Hawaii, pregnant with my second child, I basically said to Chuck, I said, okay, like this is the time where, I'm going to do it. I'm going to build my own company. And his initial reaction was like, no, like you're not going to do that, because he felt that he was going to get sucked into it and he was going to have to help and it was going to be a lot of work. And I was like, no, like I got it this time. Because in the past, right, like they were just side hustles and we didn't make a ton of money or anything like that. But this time was different. I just felt like I just knew that I could make it work. I don't know what it was exactly, but there was like something inside me that was like, yes, I'm going to make it work. And at that point, this was in 2014. At that point, when I made this decision, it wasn't like I had this like grandiose vision. Like, yes, of course, I would have like always, I would have loved to have like a huge growing company at the time. But for me at that time with, now I was going to have 2 kids. To me, it was just like, okay, I'm going to just have, a little company where I'm going to be able to afford to pay my own salary, right? And to have like a lifestyle where I will never miss anything for my kids. Like I'd be able to attend whatever activities they had at school or whatever, and basically work from home and make my own schedule. So that's basically how this all started.
Question. I just heard you say
Yes.
like you were pregnant when you decided to start your own company. One, that's incredibly ambitious because most people think, you know what, I'm just going to wait until after I have this kid and then get settled in and then start. And then two, you mentioned like this was intended only as a lifestyle business, meaning you just needed to make sure you covered all your bases, expenses and stuff just so that you could live. Is that right? Like what made
That
you
is
think,
absolutely,
yeah, what made you
yes,
think
that
like
is absolutely right.
sorry, I was going to say, what made you want to do this while having a kid?
That's a good question. Well, when I moved to Hawaii, right, Hawaii is not a cheap place to live. So I knew that I needed to make a living. And so I, I don't know, it was something that I wanted to do. And let me also say that it's not like I just dropped everything and started a company. It was a progression for a year or two, meaning I knew that it was going to take a while for me to get my income back up to what I was used to. So I did what I coined it to be like to straddle, right? So I basically found a part-time job that made me 80% of what I normally make full time. And so I only worked, let's say, 20 to 25 hours a week. And then I spent the rest of my time building my business because I wanted to make sure that, I wasn't shooting myself in the foot and that I had enough income to be able to sustain living here and for my family.
I actually have a different question because
Sure.
you said you always knew you wanted to start your own business.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I'd love to. Okay. So when I was in the fourth grade, my family moved from so I'm born and raised in Toronto. And so my parents were immigrants. And so we moved to a place in Toronto where a lot of immigrants go, and that's where they start off, right? Because my parents couldn't bring their money with them. And so by the time we were in the fourth grade, we went from living in a tiny apartment. There was 6 of us living in a 3-bedroom tiny apartment, one full bathroom. And then we moved into this 3,000 square foot house in Richmond Hill. And so when I made this move in the fourth grade, all of my friends, literally all my closest girlfriends, their dads had their own business. And not only that, their dads had their own business. And then the one where their dad was a teacher, the mom had a daycare type of business. So I was just surrounded by my friends whose parents were entrepreneurs, and I saw the lifestyle they lived. Because growing up, I mean, both my parents were working, and they lived paycheck to paycheck, really. We didn't have a lavish lifestyle. It sounded like, they were just getting by, and we didn't go on crazy vacations or anything like that. And I saw my friends where their parents, back in the 80s, they'd have those big car phones, right? It would be that brick car phones. They'd go to sandals and beaches, and they just had these amazing lifestyles. And then not only that, their mothers stayed home. And so, and they, they were just wholesome, great families. And I think that's what got me thinking of if these people can all have their own businesses, it seems like a pretty good idea. And so at a young age, I was just exposed to that. And then by the time I was in high school, I took a couple business classes and read some business books. And some of the business books that I read just seemed like common sense to me, right? So this was back in the 90s, and I already understood the importance of treating your employees well and inspiring them so that they could also be great. And so I just remember reading all these books, and I'm like, duh, this is just common sense, right? And I think those were the key factors, I think, that had me knowing I've just always wanted to get into business. And sure enough, I actually, when I was going to college, university, I applied for business school because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And it was my mother and my family that was nope, get into tech. Tech is the future. You need to get into tech. And they really like drilled that in me. And I was a little disappointed because my passion was like, no, but I want to get into business. And I've got older brothers that are also in tech. And literally I got into like the university that I wanted to get into. And I got a call from my brother and he was like, no, you just want to go there because it's a party school. You really should go to Waterloo, right? Which is, known in Canada as a tech school. And I ended up getting into Waterloo. And what I found was there was a program that was like a double major. So I could have, my tech background, which satisfied my family. But then I also had that business degree from Wilfrid Laurier that satisfied like my hunger to learn about business. So it kind of worked out. And I'm so grateful though. I'm so grateful that my mom did push me into tech because like, look where I am now, right? And can I share like a little bit more about, so let me share about recently, because I was like, Mom, thank you so much for pushing me into tech because there's not a lot of women in tech. Even now, there's not a lot of women in tech. And truthfully, growing up, I wasn't it wasn't even a thought in my mind that women can't do it or they shouldn't be in tech. Like there was none of that. And even with my older brothers, like I never felt that, oh, because I'm a girl, I can't do it. Like that was just in my family. I was never raised that way. I just never even thought that, like I wouldn't be capable of doing this, like getting into this career that was male dominated. So anyways, I asked my mom, I said, like back in the 80s, like, why were you telling us, computers are the future? Like, how did you know this, right? It was the 80s, 90s, like we've always had computers in our house. And she told me that by the time it was like in the 90s, she was responsible for like writing checks for payroll for like contractors or something. And she told me, and this was just this year, I cannot believe I didn't know this. She was like, I was writing their paychecks and they made such a great hourly, like their hourly wage was so good and they made such great pay that I knew that that computers is our future, because this was near like the Y2K and all of that. So she was a part of that. And that's why she was so she was just so into me getting into technology, because she knew that like so many things were being replaced with technology. So I just found that out this year. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing such great
Yeah.
stories. So I love Anne's contribution to our podcast because we also talk about careers. However, she went from career to entrepreneurship, which is, kind of my pathway. So thanks for sharing that, because it's, not everybody is career to stay in career. Some people are really meant to be career into entrepreneurship or vice versa, right? Though there's not vice versa, but there might be a blip of entrepreneurship at times. Who has a question based on what she was saying? Because there's a lot in there.
A lot. I love that you got that feedback from your mom. And, so from being a business founder and being a mother, can you share some insights or, reality bites around
Tips.
what it means to be, I guess, a working mother? So your dreams of, or your visions of being at home with your kids, being there for your kids, are all of those true and accurate? Like, how do you feel about this illusion of balance?
Okay, so I'm going to have to say that I now believe that balance is bullshit. I don't think that you could ever really have real balance when you are working towards a goal, right? And so I remember, for years I was like, oh, I'm trying to create balance. I'm trying to create balance. But in order to create success in any area of your life, you need like intense focus, right? Intense focus. And so I would say that with my kids, have I ever missed an event? Not really. I mean, it's been, if I missed anything, it was rare. And so I've always been home for their birthdays. I've never been traveling or anything like that. I go to all of their events at school. And so for that, yes, I did create my dream that way. I never missed like their first steps, because I had another child 2 years after that. So I have 3 girls now, and I never missed any of those special moments. I never did. But mind you, Was I working in the hospital room when the day I delivered? 100% I was, right? Most people would probably think that I'm crazy and not being present, but like when they're sleeping, yeah, I'm going to be taking advantage of that time and working. So for me, I feel like when I'm there, I'm there, and there are times when I can't be there all the time. Like for instance, their homework may not get done sometimes. I may not be able to help them with their homework all the time. I may not be able to take them to practice or anything like that. And I'm okay with that. As long as I'm there for the big things and when I'm with them, I'm present with them. I think for me, that's what makes it okay for me, right? Because I do work a lot. And I make no excuses. Like I work a lot. However, when I need to be with my kids, I'm with my kids. Right. And so I had a mentor once told me, she said, I am never going to be that soccer mom. Like I'm never going to be there at practice. I'm never going to like take them to soccer. I'll be there at the games, but I'm not going to be that soccer mom. I'm a business owner and that's just how it is. And so when I heard like another mother say that, and she was like super successful, right? It like almost made it okay that it's like, you know what? I'm not going to be there for them 24/7, but I'll be there when it counts. And when I'm with them, I'm 100% present. And then another thing that we do with my kids is we incorporate them in the business. So they attend our events. We take them to our dinners sometimes. I've taken them to like our trade shows where we have like booths and stuff. So I definitely make it a point to weave my kids in the day to day. But the one thing that I think I'm good at is I never strive for perfection. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm okay with it not being perfect. I'm just okay with making it work. And sometimes it's insanity, and that's okay.
I think that's huge. The like being okay with this insanity, I think
Yeah.
it is part of it. And to be honest, raising your children and being, I guess helicopter doesn't necessarily serve anybody. So sometimes stepping away gives them a chance to grow and expand their wings, and you're giving them the space to do so. So that's always been my sort of philosophy. I joke with my kids sometimes that, I do work a lot as well. And, his independence that he has now is a result of what I call neglect. But he knows that I'm just joking, but it does feel like I'm neglecting him sometimes. But I don't make food for him all the time. Like, you're old enough, you could feed yourself. If you don't know how to feed yourself by now, you're 17 years old, we've got a bigger problem. So sometimes you have to turn that kind of that guilt into something more positive.
Yeah. I mean, I have my 7-year-old cooking for herself. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I mean, she can, get stuff out of the fridge and everything like that. And it's just, you know what? I'm just not one of those moms that are going to have like a full cooked meal at the end of the day. That's just not going to be me. I am going to be focusing on the business, and the one thing that I learned this year was to get more help, right? So get more help, whether it's in your home, whether it's like even for my kids' projects, right? So I used to be afraid of being judged, but now I'm like, that was the best thing ever that I hired help to help with my kids' projects because I need to get stuff done in my business, right? And I can help a little bit, but I have somebody else helping like take it to the finish line. So they know that I'm still involved. I'm still in the same room while the project is happening, but I've got somebody else like doing the heavy lifting, helping with the gluing, and I'm in the same room doing my work.
I love that.
That's
And
real talk.
also to be, like how many arguments have you gotten into with your kids? Because there's just something about just you being their mom where they're just like, well, I'm just going to throw everything off the table and I'm going to give you a hard time and it's always going to be no. But if it's somebody else, they're perfect angels. So yeah, if you just take me out of the equation, they're actually better. So I'm going to just do us all a favor and I'll just give you space.
Except for my little one, she's just, she's just will tell it like it is, and it doesn't matter if it's her mom or whoever. So
a leader in the making. So
yeah.
Janice, do you want to jump in here just on the topic of the BS of this facade of thing called balance?
I would love to hear you talk more about it. And I think for some people who are listening or watching, they say, well, I don't want to be one of those leaders or owners or people that just work themselves into the ground. And I'm not saying that you do, but like, how do you talk to, like, how do you address that when that comes up for people who are like, well, I want to be successful, but I don't want to have to sacrifice?
You're going to have to sacrifice at some points in time. And, I know that there's a lot of people that do think that I'm a workaholic. And I have to say that for a couple of years, for a lot of years when I started the company, I didn't have a life. I think it's getting better now that we have a bigger company. But I think it's all in what is important to you, right? So for instance, like sometimes I would rather be in spreadsheets than be at a party. And that's just me. Like I'm a geek that way. I would much rather connect with people, but I don't have to connect with somebody for 6 or 7 hours or be at a party for 6 or 7 hours. I can go to a party for 2 or 3 hours and then go and get more work done. So I think that what's important is knowing yourself and what you value and then revolving your life around your values. I enjoy working. And truthfully, I'm not working a ton like I used to. Like I was working, 60, 70 hours. However, I also did that, when I was in corporate as well. And so now that I feel like I do feel like this year I kind of turned a corner and I'm in a different place where I do not that because there is no such thing as balance, but I do create more of a balanced life. And here's how I do that. So recently I understood that I was running my health to the ground because it was all work. And so I realized like your health is your wealth. And without your health and your energy, then you won't have a business and you won't have that longevity. So I've actually made a shift where I'll make it a point to like go work out and go to the gym. And I will schedule that as as something that's just as important as a meeting. And in the past, I would never do that. In the past, it'd be like, well, this meeting is more important or this meeting is more important. I can easily skip a workout. But I've shifted my mindset, I'd say, in the last year and a half, where I've realized that it's like I'm important, my health is important, and so I make that happen. And I also have more energy when I do that. So that's one thing I do when it comes to eating, right? So there's always solutions. I don't like to cook. I'd rather work than cook, truthfully. I really would. So I have people meal prep for me. On occasions or on a weekend, I'll have somebody meal prep. So I just have to heat it up. So I do that. So what I've learned in the last year is in order to create a life that you want or create a life that works for you, because everybody's different, right? So create a life that works for you is you figure out what your challenges are and then you come up with solutions that work to make your life work. Right. So like for me, my kids are really important to me, right? While I do work a lot, I love spending time with my kids, but I don't have to spend, 10 hours a day with them. Like I can spend a couple focused hours with them, have fun, and then get some work done and then spend another little bit. It could be like 5 or 10 minutes where we just like snuggle for a little bit. Right. But that's what works for me. So I think that everybody's different. So everybody has to like analyze or figure out what works for me. What do I want from my life and what do I not want in my life? Like for me, I didn't want to cook. I didn't want to spend my time cleaning. So that's where I get help and I delegate and I have other people help support me so that I could do what I do best in the company.
I do have a follow-up question to what you were talking about. What have you done or what actions did you take to kind of like make the turning point where you said you're not working as much, you're not as busy, but you're still, seeing this huge ramp up in success and just based on the accolades that we've heard from the last couple of years, what did you do differently?
I think it was just getting in my mind that I didn't have to do it all, right? So in the beginning of the company, it was I have to do it all because we don't have the resources, we don't have the funds to hire that many people. And then during COVID, before COVID, we went from maybe like 4 or 5 of us to 30 of us now. So this growth happened during COVID. And so while we had that growth, I started seeing that there's other people that can help. And truthfully, I think it was just me being tired. Like I just knew that I could not work that much, and I didn't want to. Like I do want a life. I do, want to have a little bit more fun. I don't want to work 24/7. So I think it came from okay, I did my part during COVID. I worked like crazy. Now I want to have a little bit of fun, or else I'm going to go crazy, if that makes sense. So it came from like a desire within saying, okay, we got this far. Now, how can I be sane and still have more growth? And so I just delegated more, not not in the company, but also in my personal life. So learned how to delegate in the company and just trusting other people to get things done and creating processes to get things done. And then I did the same thing in my personal life. So then started getting like a personal assistant or, hiring somebody part-time to just handle my life. And that's been that's just been life-changing. I think that's one thing that I've done this year. So even help with picking up my kids, getting me lunch, getting my groceries, prepping my meals, cleaning my house, you name it, going shopping for Christmas, handling my trip, telling me where I should go eat. Like all of that just helps me make my life work so that I can spend more time working, right? So like I feel like I'm working less, I'm not doing all that other stuff, but then the time I do have, I'm focused on doing important things, if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, because this is an awesome conversation because we had a conversation probably, I want to say like 8 months ago. And it was right at that point where like, Anne's like, wait a second, like something's got to give here. And was debating getting this personal assistant, like where do I go to like get more help? And, we were talking about some ideas and it was like a pivot to accept getting this help. So I just want to say like part of your success includes this letting go, I would say, of control, but knowing that someone else can do the job better too, right? So that's really awesome. So I want to just say like that's worth celebrating, I would say.
And for me, it wasn't like necessarily like the giving up control. For me, and I hear this from other mothers and entrepreneurs, is I didn't know I could afford it, right? Like I didn't know that I could afford somebody to cook my meals. I didn't know that I could afford somebody clean my house every week. And so it just starts little by little, right? Like, I had somebody come clean my house once every 2 weeks, and then it was once a week, and you just stack on top of that little by little. And then that extra time that I have, it's like, okay, now I can focus on growing the business.
Or exercise or right?
Exactly. And then one thing that I didn't mention that is really key and important is that I always have mentors and coaches around me. So mentors in every area of my business. And more recently, I have a personal coach that's been there, done that, super successful in many areas. And she also helps guide me. And she was the one who basically was like, you need a personal assistant to even like do your groceries, right? And I was like, can I do that? And just asking my team to like get me food sometimes, because I would get my own food. And sometimes if I don't have enough time, I need to eat because it sustains me for the rest of the day, right? So it's asking help for just getting me food.
That's awesome. So now that you're here and you've turned the corner as you look into 2023, what are some of your goals, if you want to share? And like, what are some of the tips that you have for us who have big goals too, to get them?
Great question. So for 2023, the economists are predicting a tough year for 2023. So for me, it's knowing that it might be a rough year ahead. So I'm doing my best to be conservative for 2023. And then the one thing that I do as a leadership team is we get together for a whole day. So our date is like the second week of January. We get together for a whole day. We lock ourselves in the room and we go through this process. We call it's the EOS process from Traction. And we come up with our goals for the year, what we want to happen for the year, and then we come up with a strategy of how we're going to get there. So that's what we do at the beginning of January to set up our year. But before that, also is what I do is at the end of the year, I always I look back and I think, okay, what did we accomplish this year? What did we do right? What do we want to keep doing? What do we need to change? And I write down my vision of what is it that I want? What is it? How do I see the company? How do I want it to grow? What does that look like? And I just write it down as I'm a manifester. I write it down and I figure out the how later. Like the how does it matter at that point? I'm just trying to figure out what is it that I want? What is it that I want to create? And then in January, I get clear with my partners so that we're all on the same page and we know exactly where this train is going. And then we come up with the different strategies on how to get there. Does that make sense? Did I answer that question? And then
100%. Thank you.
I would also say to dream bigger, right? So I remember when I first started the company in 2014, I had a business partner then, and all I wanted to do was get to $1 million. And I thought that was going to take me like 5 or 10 years. And I just thought, okay, I know that we're going to get to $1 million. And my business partner at the time had all these doubts. He's like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like he thought I was a dreamer, but I was like, no. We're going to get to $1 million. I literally thought it was going to take us 5 or 10 years. I mean, it happened so fast. And then $1 million turned to 2 million. And it's like, you just don't know what you're capable of. So I always say, dream bigger. You don't need to know the how. Just figure out what you want and then work on believing it, because the answers will come to you. You don't need to know how you're going to get there. You just need to know that you want to get there, and you have to be very clear that that's where you want to go. And the strategies and everything that you, like the people that you need to meet, the events that need to take place, it'll all happen. You just got to get clear.
Awesome. So just 2 takeaways: balance is BS, and it's focus on what you really want, and then you can figure out the details later.
Yeah. Yes, balance is BS. However, you can create the life that you want, right? Like you can definitely have aspects of what you want. I go on vacations. I've gone on 2 or maybe 3 or 4 dream vacations in the last year. So I'm working my butt off, right, for a lot. And then I have that week that is just so magical with my kids. And then I'm working like crazy. And then I have like another week that's magical for my kids. So it's like you just have to create the life that you want. It's not going to be like everything's like perfect and, you have enough time for everything all the time. There's going to be a time for everything. You just have to schedule it in, and it's not going to be like perfect. Like it's not going to be like this much time is the exact same time with my kids as work or whatever. It doesn't work that way.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing all of that.
That's really good. Thank you.
I know. Any other questions about how she got here, this manifesting human?
Yeah.
Right?
What other tools, I guess, would you say from a business perspective, like from a systems process perspective, what tips would you have for, business leaders? What processes made the most sense? Like, how do you prioritize which processes and which systems to put in place?
Ooh, I don't know if you're going to like my answer. In the beginning, when you're in a startup mode, it's whatever fire is burning brighter. It's what's the biggest problem, what fire is the biggest that's going to have the most impact, whether it's financial and, which problem can we solve faster and then just knock them out. Right. I'm still fighting fires. I'm still figuring out which fire is more important to put out, right? So we kind of we have a process where we put down all of our problems and we come up with solutions and we prioritize.
Right.
I would say for tips, especially for people that are starting off their business, you got to wear a lot of hats in the beginning, because in the beginning, when you start off, you don't have a lot of resources. You can't hire a lot of people. So I feel like where I had success is that, and I was more general, because I had to be. I was a generalist because I had to be, because I couldn't afford to hire all these experts in all these different fields. So I had to understand sales and marketing. I had to, really dive deep in those topics so that if ever I had to sell, and I have in the beginning, it was me and my partner, I knew how to sell.
Right.
And then I had to know how to market the company. I had to understand all the strategies so that I could do it myself. And then I have to understand accounting, right? You got to understand the processes and the strategies to make sure that you're making money, you're not losing money, you're paying your bills on time, right? So
Right.
you got sales, marketing, then you've got accounting. Okay, then there's the actual tech of it. You need somebody in operations that actually has to figure out, how do you get the work done that you sold?
Right.
And so you definitely, in the beginning, I had to learn pretty much everything in the company, right? And I wasn't an expert at everything, but I knew enough that I could run that department. And then as I got more resources, I hired more people and then handed that off to them. And so I came up with these processes. And then as you grow, the processes break and you have to come up with another process
Right.
over and over and over again. Some of the tools that I've used from the beginning is I read a book called Traction. I mentioned that earlier. And so Traction is a system where you have weekly meetings. So you have weekly meetings, and then you have quarterly all-day meetings, and then you have yearly planning meetings. And in the beginning, we self-implemented. I read a book, I learned how to do it, and we implemented ourselves because we couldn't afford to hire a coach.
Right.
Now, as of last year, we hired our traction coach who then helps us through the process. So I think that was a big thing that we did. And then I feel like entrepreneurs, leaders should always be reading. Leaders are readers, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly reading on what can I do better, what strategies are out there, what can I do to make things more efficient, what processes do I need to tweak. So I'd say reading was a big thing for me. Reading and then seminars. Reading, learning, mentors, all of that is what pretty much got me, I think, to where I am. And that includes mastermind groups. So having a group of people that are also business owners and that we're feeding off of each other, where, I'm getting tips from them and I'm implementing and they're getting tips from me and we're just helping each other succeed. I'd say that was another strategy that I used.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think one of the things that we'll do for our listeners and even maybe for us is maybe get a list of your top 10 books and a couple of the seminars that you've attended so that we can reference them for this episode so that everyone
Absolutely.
can take a look at the stuff that you've read and the seminars that you've attended to maybe achieve the same kind of success that you have.
Awesome.
That's so good. Well,
Thanks.
thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Any other closing remarks?
Well, I want to say thanks, really, just for the openness and, sharing your family and your history, like the family you were born into and the family that you created. And again, wishing you all the success for 2023 also.
Thank you. I
Yes, and
appreciate
in the
that.
spirit of Hawaii, mahalo.
Yes, mahalo.
Thank you for having me, ladies. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Fireside Leadership. Until next time.